Welcome back to American Agenda. I'm Bob Sellers here with Heather Childers. Some breaking news for you, if you want to call it breaking news. President Trump releasing a statement today applauding what he called thousands. Here's a look. Here you go.
Beautiful.
Thousands of voters in Jupiter, Florida, saying, the former president saying, if we can go back a little bit. So,
yeah.
There. Okay. Wow, I hear they have thousands and thousands of boats parading in Jupiter. We can show that now. Despite the fact that they tried to cancel showing the boats, everyone is having an incredible time on this day. We especially appreciate everyone who served and fought for our great country. I love you all.
That looks like so much fun, though. Look, the blue flag, love that. President Trump flag.
We understand Roger Stone is somewhere out there.
I was asking, can we see Roger Stone without his shirt off so we can see his big Nixon tattoo across his back?
Yeah.
That's great, though. That's great to see.
Ash, I think people there were having a great time, paying homage, having a good time, but also remembering why we're able to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, unlike Kamala Harris, this weekend is more about just having a fun, long weekend. I'm glad those people are able to enjoy, what they're doing in voting. But, look, I think it's great for the president. I'm glad to see him out and tweeting. And, I think it's very encouraging.
All right, let's move on to the topic we were going to talk about here. Texas Democrats walking out over the weekend in a dramatic last-ditch effort to block Texas Governor Greg Abbott's sweeping new voting reform bill. This comes as the GOP efforts nationwide are imposing stricter voting laws and maintaining election integrity. This revolt leaving Republican lawmakers with no choice but to abandon a midnight deadline and declare the legislative session over. However, well, let's listen to that.
Mr. Guerin makes a point of order that a quorum is not present. Based on the tally sheet furnished by the voting clerk, a quorum is apparently not present. The point of order is well taken and sustained.
In other words, you need a quorum to conduct business. They couldn't conduct business because the Democrats had left. Now the governor, not amused by the stunt, he announced that he would order a special new session and drag the lawmakers back to work on the bill again at another time. And then this afternoon, it's about an hour ago, he announced that he was going to dock their pay. He wasn't going to pay them if they didn't come back to work.
Yeah, the Democratic lawmakers. He was actually going to dock their pay, I think, for what they did already, for walking out.
There you go. Yeah. So Melanie's smiling. Your thoughts here?
Because I think that's fantastic. That's absolutely what he should do. That's a very capitalistic Republican thing to do. I'm impressed by that. They shouldn't have walked out. They're prolonging the inevitable. That's the bottom line. And quite frankly, let's be fair here. Those voting laws needed to be tweaked. A couple of the things that they were doing were reversing the pandemic laws that were passed, such as drive-through voting and things like that, and tightening up some of the vote-by-mail laws that they had in place. So these are things that needed to be done. They need to be grown-ups and go back to work like they're supposed to. And I think docking their pay is a fantastic idea. That's why I was smiling.
And Bobby, this is the way it works. They're supposed to get together, hash it out, and then come out with a result. If the result is nothing, that's one thing. But walking out and not allowing business to proceed, that's a different approach entirely.
Oh, absolutely. And this is my home state. This is Texas Democrats right here. The last time they tried this back in 2003, they went off to Oklahoma. Yes. They left the state, and then they went to New Mexico. But again, like Melanie said, it's inevitable. They came back in 2003. They were protesting redistricting. Guess what? You have to get that job done. You have to draw the lines. Here, this measure is going to be enacted. They'll call a special session. And again, this is common sense of voting legislation that the media tries to spin as restrictive or harsh or voter suppression. Terms like that, phrases like that do nothing to bring people together and do nothing to describe what's really going on in this issue. To have integrity in the elections should be something that everyone wants. To examine, audit an election afterwards should be something that everyone wants. And the Democrats complain, and now they're walking out.
And Heather, the process will decide what ends up in that bill. Maybe not everything that was passed in the Senate gets in the House version, but that's the way it works.
Right. And the line is he's not going to pay people who didn't do their job. And I wouldn't expect to get paid if I wasn't doing my job, nor would most people, I don't think. So I think it's only fair. And hopefully the Democrats and Republicans will heed the warnings of Governor Abbott there in the great state of Texas, and they'll get the job done so that they can work on voter integrity, because that's what it boils down to. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I really just don't get the issues with trying to make sure that there's one vote for every person who is registered to vote. I don't think that should be a problem.
Yeah. Now, Ash, I used to work in Texas as a reporter, and I don't recall how much money they made. It probably wasn't a lot. So maybe
not much.
Yeah. And they only meet every other year, which I think is beautiful. If they can make it once every 3 years, it'd be even better. But this is, at least it sets a standard and sends a message that this will not be tolerated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the message is more symbolic. If I may be mistaken, I think they make roughly $700 a year. So when you factor that up, it's probably not really financially impacting any Democrats that have the means and ability to be a state rep. It's always interesting in Texas. We'll spend millions of dollars to elect people to a job that pays, $1,400 every time they go into session. But what's really, I think, a big mistake for them is that they're really just delaying the inevitable. In Texas, when we call special session, so like you said, we only have session every 2 years. If we need to have a session in between those periods, the governor calls a special session, but he is allowed, and only him, to choose exactly what is addressed in those special sessions. So essentially what's going to happen is Governor Abbott will call a special session. We'll probably have one on this and one on redistricting, but they won't be able to avoid it in those special sessions, and they won't be able to mask over it with any other issues. And so I think ultimately it's going to be a downfall of Texas Democrats. I noticed that State Representative Leach tweeted last night that one Democrat said, "Hey, this is a mistake on our party walking off the House floor." I thought that was really interesting. And frankly, a lot of Democrats and who they should be campaigning for actually helped in this bill. I mean, one of the points that's made is in line when the polls close, meaning if you're in line at 7 p.m. when the polls close, you continue to get to vote, which is usually only a problem in large metropolitan areas where Democrats and more liberal-leaning voters are trying to get to the polls, trying to get off work. And so I find it interesting that they're almost hurting themselves by walking out.
Ash, where are you in Texas?
I'm in Abilene, Texas. So
okay.
I work in Austin, but live in Abilene.
Oh, work in Austin. Okay. And Bobby, where are you?
Just outside of Houston, Sugar Land area over there.
My wife was born in Sugar Land. So very good.
Yeah, that's nice.
All right. Thank you. We're going to take a break here.